Hello and welcome to another episode of Virtual Legality. I'm your host, Richard Hoeg, managing member of the Hoeg Law business law firm of Northville, Michigan. And when we earlier this week did a video about what we had then called the guidelines trap, but also referenced as the largesse trap, I had no idea just how fast the gaming industry would give us an example of the practice. Now, if you didn't follow that video, please do check it out. Some of the contents contained in that video are probably going to be helpful to understanding what I'm going to talk about in this one. But long story short, the largesse trap, the guidelines trap, the copyright infringement trap, whatever you want to call it, is premised around the fact that game publishers are not otherwise licensing the broadcast, streaming, or content creation rights that a whole lot of people probably think they are. Instead, rather than legally licensing that intellectual property right to you, the content creator, they are telling you, we're not licensing that to you, but if you follow the guidelines that we otherwise provide, if you swim within the lanes that we otherwise designate, we probably aren't going to actually act against the infringement, which you are definitely engaged in. That's the trap. But today, we have one of the biggest examples of it we have yet seen. Enter, my name is Bife. And if you aren't familiar with this particular YouTuber, you probably aren't familiar with the Destiny video game. My Name is Bife has been spending years basically breaking down the lore, story, and other contents of Destiny in a way that, honestly, I have to tell you, is very, very helpful, especially to players that are bouncing in and out of this multi-year product. Now, earlier today, My Name is Bife, who calls himself the Lore Daddy, put out a tweet a little bit like this. Hey, so, Bungie help, Bungie, mind telling me how my typical lore content is in violation of your 80-20 rule? If it does somehow violate the rule, then perhaps myself and the rest of the YouTube community should find another job. Obviously, hot under the collar on this. I don't really blame him. And the image that he provides is a YouTube content removal and a potential strike, depending on what these companies wind up doing in the long term. You see it referenced as such here. The note from the Destiny 2 folks is this video contains in-game content belonging to our client. So this is a representative, an IP police force that has found this video on YouTube. And they say copying, reproducing, distributing, displaying, or otherwise exploiting Bungie's software/elements without their consent is unlawful. Now, My Name is Bife continues. This takedown is clearly against Bungie's own policy on community-created content. I will tell you why I think that's probably not quite as clear as Bife thinks here. I am not normally one for rudeness, but whoever is over as CSC needs to be reined in hard and reminded of your policy. Are you going to choose them or the community? It's them or us. Pick one. And then he calls on Destiny support. Hate to at you all on a Sunday morning this early, but then calls on various community folks at Bungie. This is getting out of hand. I, for one, am laying the blame at the feet of CSC. Reminder to everyone else, the community managers and Bungie didn't do this. Don't harass them, which is also a nice way of saying don't get up in their DMs. Maybe don't make a virtual legality video, but I think this is an important topic to discuss. So we have a few things to talk about here, this 80-20 rule, et cetera, et cetera. And Bungie, for all the problems that I potentially have with them on their business model and various other things you've probably seen me discuss in virtual legality, has been relatively open about the trap that they have set. Here, in a tweet from January, Cosmo, one of their community folks at Bungie, said, wanted to clarify our policies on using Destiny IP in creator creations, in response to another that says, hey, why was my stuff taken down? Although we reserve the right to take down any unlicensed use of our IP, we won't generally issue takedown requests if content follows the guidelines laid out on this link. Now, you probably could turn off this video right now and understand what the issue is here. They have put out these guidelines that a lot of people treat as safe harbors, as absolute protective shields that allow them to do what they do. If we go look at Bife's YouTube channel, he has been making a living at this, right? 9.5 million views, 4.5 million. And I would argue it's very useful to Bungie that he do so. And I'd also argue that this is likely an error, as he suggests, and this will get reversed, but quick, because Bungie doesn't want to be known as the crew that's taking down videos that are enormously useful to its own community. But even a YouTube content creator like Bife, who so many people know, he's almost at 1 million subscribers, is still susceptible to the fact that he is otherwise very likely infringing on Destiny's IP, on the IP that Bungie holds. So when it comes right down to it, whether or not he's complying with these guidelines, we will see how Bungie has set their trap in the legal license that they will reference as part of this guidelines document. So let's take a look at the guidelines and what BIFE means by the 80-20 rule. So Bungie starts out with some nice hand waving. Bungie strongly supports the efforts of our community. Bungie also generally approves streaming or commentary through approved platforms like Twitch, YouTube, or Facebook. Now here again, we see that word generally. That in and of itself should give you pause. That's Bungie saying, hey, these are our guidelines, but they're not rules, they're not laws. We're not going to be bound here. We're generally not going to do anything, but we make no promises. And we'll see that even more clearly when we talk about the 80-20 rule. Bungie reserves the right to enforce its intellectual property rights against any infringer. Now, if they stopped right there, that would be obvious enough. They don't actually stop right there in this document. They add another proviso that actually limits that right. Who violates the following guidelines, community standards, or code of conduct. In the event that creators seek to profit from the use of Bungie assets, they must seek permission from Bungie and obtain a license to do so. Now, we talked about Stranger of Paradise earlier this week. We talked about the way Square Enix handles this and how they specifically exempt from their guidelines, at least, the use of YouTube and other platforms to get advertising money and things like that, indirect payment structures. That isn't referenced here. Instead, what Bungie does is set this 80-20 rule. Players may create videos using Destiny gameplay, which may be uploaded to third-party sharing services like YouTube. If a chosen video-on-demand service enables players to monetize content, we will generally not request a takedown if at least 20% of the content within the video has been created by the player. Examples of what player-created content may be defined as include, but are not limited to, one presumes, custom commentary, animations, graphics, or gameplay. Conversely, please do not upload Bungie trailers or cutscenes with mere advertisements or borders that take up 20% of the screen or 20% of the runtime. Content creators should use their own stuff to make their own stuff rather than uploading our content to their own channels. Use our stuff to make their own stuff. And you can understand where Bungie's coming from here, but just like we talked about with Square Enix, just like we've talked about with respect to other publishers, it's important to note that if they had actually licensed the broadcast rights as a streamer or a content creator would need for this purpose, they actually wouldn't have the ability to take down on an infringement claim at all. Instead, they reserve the right to find infringement wherever they like and then promise you that if you follow these guidelines, we will generally not request a takedown. This isn't a promise at all. If a lawyer were to look at this and you were sitting across the table from them, they would point out to you that this isn't an obligation. When you say we will generally not request something, that means we can request something if we deign to do so, and we will see that writ large in the actual legal license they use. But that's the 80-20 rule. And if you go and you look at BIFE's content here, you will see that he uses video clips, he uses music clips, he uses various things from Bungie that you could argue are fair use. That would be an interesting litigation. But absent that argument, and it certainly wouldn't apply with respect to all uses of the content that he has taken from Bungie, then you have to be acting with their license or just hoping that they don't take you down with an infringement claim. Even someone with almost 1 million subscribers is susceptible to this, whether from Bungie or an outsourced content police force that they appear to be using now. And that can create problems. It can create problems that could end your YouTube channel in 2 seconds if you're running something based on the intellectual property of another. This is why I make these videos, is so that people are aware of these facts and hopefully that content creators that are clearly valuable to the Bungies of the world, clearly valuable to the Square Enixes of the world, at least start to use some of their political pressure to say, actually, I need a license that can't be taken away from me at a whim or if you hire the wrong company. Because that's what's happening here. Because as much as we want to scroll through these guidelines, they only say what they will generally do. They also say they have to protect their trademarks if you call it Destiny at all, which is probably correct, even though there's no indication that anything from My Name is BIFE is from Bungie. You can get in all sorts of fights there. And then they incorporate by reference and direct you to the game content usage rules in their Bungie terms of use. This is the official legal license. Right, and as I said, I did a video on this earlier this week. You can check it out. But what's most important to know is that the copyright holder has the rights to do everything exclusively. And you only get the rights to their Destiny product to the extent they license them to you. So when you go and you look at the terms of use that they directed us to, and you see Unless otherwise specified, the Bungie services are for your personal and non-commercial use, and except as expressly provided in these terms, you may not modify, copy, distribute, transmit, display, perform, reproduce, publish, license, create derivative works from, transfer, or sell any information, software, products, or services obtained from us from the Bungie services. You know that like every other video game software license, they're not actually giving you what you think that you can use in those guidelines. The legal situation here is that when you make something using their stuff, when you stream Bungie's Destiny product, whatever it is that you do with it, you are in infringement land, and they have the right to go take you down and tell the platform that you're using to take you down, and they're just giving you a document that says, we probably won't actually take you down in these specific circumstances. Bungie, to their credit in terms of honesty, but to their detriment in terms of what they actually say, actually gets worse than Square Enix in their official legal document. We have to scroll a bit because they don't like to actually set off their sections. They don't like to number anything. This is actually very, very hard to read, even for a lawyer. But if we scroll about halfway down, we do find that game content usage rules section. And this is where the rubber really hits the road for someone like My Name is Bife. Game content usage rules. Your use of our data and content must be non-commercial unless you obtain Bungie's prior written permission. That isn't happening in this guideline document. I know it looks like it is. I will tell you it isn't. You might be able to bring an equitable claim that you did what you did because you thought they had made a promise, and maybe that will work, but this is not a contract. This is not something with consideration. This is not something signed by Bungie. This is just designed to look that way. So in the license itself, it says you can't do anything commercially. That means, because they like to take away the legalese and try to get down and hip with the kids, you don't own our stuff, so you can't sell it, use it to sell other things, or give other people permission to use it. We ask that you put some time and effort into your content. Make it your own. In fact, we can change this policy or order you to stop sharing our content for any reason, at any time, without warning, even if we have previously given you permission. We have a hard time imagining why we do that. Thanks, that belongs in a legal document, I suppose. But we reserve the right. Their actual legal license to a player of Destiny, to My Name is Bife, to whomever is making Bungie-used content, is that we can take away our permissions at any time and strike you. If your My Name is Bife, you're looking at this situation saying, well, they could strike the whole channel in 2 seconds. It's all using Destiny content. And yeah, maybe you could win a suit over fair use on some of these. Maybe you'd even have significant success. Would you succeed in all of these? And so as a content creator, it's far past time for people in the gaming industry to realize that this isn't limited to Square Enix. This isn't limited to small streamers or even people that they don't like. They can hire the wrong company and strike one of their most useful marketing tools and maybe do it so fast that they don't even have a chance to correct things. And that's why I'm updating this content again, talking about the guidelines trap, talking about the copyright infringement trap. What matters is what you legally get. And right now, what Bungie is offering is absolutely nothing. You market their programs at your own risk, and they can take away from you in a second, and worse, they could sue over it. Right? If they decided that they really just found you despicable, regardless of what they've done for years, they could sue over the infringement that they are reserving for themselves at all times, and which you're promising YouTube you're not engaged in, or you're promising Twitch or Facebook Gaming that you're not engaged in. I mentioned that in this earlier video, but all of these sites make you promise you aren't infringing, and every single one of these major AAA games, with a minor bit of exceptions for some games, is telling you you're infringing from the start. We're not giving you the right to use our content this way. We're not giving you the right to stream our content this way. Thank you for advertising for us, but hey, you're infringing the whole time, and if we decide to drop the hammer, well, I guess that's your problem. And especially so when we hire someone else to do it, and apparently don't even tell them the rules. What is 80/20? What does that even mean in terms of providing a YouTube video that uses visual elements from our games throughout? What does 80/20 actually mean to Bungie? It means nothing. Why? Because as we pointed out, they can change the rules at any time. So any rule that they provide, regardless of whether it's generally applicable or not, can be used against you, can be used for you. It's whatever Bungie feels like. And each and every content creator that is otherwise advertising this product, and it's not limited to Bungie's, is doing it at their own risk. That needs to change. It should change. You're providing a valuable service to these companies. You're providing marketing that sells their games. And they say, well, that's all on you. Those risks are all on you. Now, fortunately, this looks like it might have a happy ending for, in particular, My Name is Bife. 1 million subscribers can do that for you. Cosmo, who we also quoted earlier in this video, is pointing out that they can take down whatever the heck they want, says, thanks, we have a meeting tomorrow to look into this. Now, 1, that means the strike will survive today. 2, that means it's vulnerable to strikes from this same company across the channel throughout the rest of the day. 3, it means you're depending on Bungie to decide it's okay with them, which they probably will because of your value. But if you put yourself in the same shoes, but without that value provided to the company, they might just say, nah, it's infringing. We don't like you. That's the guidelines trap. That's the largesse trap. That's what I've been trying to get across for 3 years here on this channel. Please do pay attention, because this kind of thing really can burn bridges, both from the publisher side and, of course, from the content creator side that is dealing with these strikes. If you enjoy this type of conversation, business and law, video games, pop culture, and more, please consider supporting the channel. We cannot do it without support from viewers and listeners like you. You've got Patreon on your screen. We have other ways to support listed below. We'll have another way to support, hopefully, in this next week. Otherwise, just subscribing, ringing the bell, upvoting, downvoting, commenting, sharing across the internet. Every little bit is helpful. If you caught this on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. And if you listen to it as a podcast, thank you so much for listening. And I will catch you on the very next episode of Virtual Legality. Virtual Legality is a YouTube video series with audio podcast versions presented as commentary and for education and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. If you have legal questions about the topics discussed, please consult your own legal counsel.